What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to today's video, which was originally going to be my post-combine mock draft 3.0, but some of the franchise tag decisions, some contract news that looks like is most likely going to happen, drastically altered like the top 10 picks in my mock draft. So I'm going to need another day or two to get that video out to you guys, and I'm very close to being finished a new rebuild that will be out tomorrow. But I was kind of scrambling for a video today, and I had a bunch of people today, in light of all the tag news, ask me, C4, where are your predictions, who's going where type stuff, and I figured why not, let's do that today. Let's stick my neck out on the line so that this time next week we kind of can look at my predictions and where we went right, where we went wrong, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's jump in. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, go all the way down to the safeties, and at quarterback 1 for free agency, we have Nick Foles. This is not a hot take. I think he's going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It makes sense from a personnel standpoint because John DeFilippo, who was Philly's QB coach, QB assistant during that Super Bowl run, obviously has great familiarity with Nick Foles. I will say, I firmly believe that it was much more Doug Peterson than it was Flip for Nick Foles' success, but it definitely does not hurt. I think if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you sign him to like a 3-year deal, you front load that deal so he gets paid a lot of money this year and a lot of money next year, and you have it out for year 3, so that way it gives you the flexibility to either draft a quarterback a little bit later this year, like you might be able to get a Drew Lock in the 2nd round, a Daniel Jones in the 2nd round, maybe wait to the 3rd or 4th round, get a Tyree Jackson, or look towards next year's draft class to getting your quarterback. Because, hey, Nick Foles, get yourself maybe a wide receiver, get yourself a playmaker in the first 2 rounds of this draft, and try to build around Nick Foles and see if you can kind of capture that spark that we got in Philadelphia. Because I'm telling you right now, Jags, from a roster standpoint, they have a good enough roster that I think a guy like Nick Foles, with the right coaching, could carry them at least into a wild card berth next year. Like, there's too much talent on that team to not make the playoffs, and Nick Foles will definitely maximize what they have on offense, much more so than Blake Bortles. We got Tyrod Taylor's another one. Now we're kind of getting into the Flyers. I think with the uncertainty of Cam Newton coming off that surgery, I think Tyrod would be a nice little fit there in Carolina. And then we have Teddy Bridgewater, and I have Teddy Bridgewater going to the Miami Dolphins. I don't think as of right now, could be persuaded, things could change. The Dolphins with Brian Flores as a rookie coach are going to make him draft a quarterback and put all that pressure of getting a quarterback in the 1st round this year. So I think you get a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who very well could emerge as your franchise starter, maybe. Like, can we still have that hope? But I just don't see the pressure of like a Kyler Murray or a Drew Lock or anything like that going to Miami at the current time, but much more go the free agency route, get Teddy Bridgewater, and then if you still need a quarterback, look towards next year. Moving to the running backs, we have Le'Veon Bell up first. I thought for sure like a low-key team until I really saw that the cap is not the greatest. I thought Tampa Bay could be an interesting spot just from, getting Bruce Arians, and Bruce Arians wanting to get that, David Johnson type weapon for his offense that he does not have at all right now in Tampa. Le'Veon Bell to Tampa, but I think ultimately the Jets are the right call, the right prediction. The Jets have the money. They desperately need a franchise player in that market, and Le'Veon Bell would definitely help out that offense to, obviously wait pending however he's going to come in. We got Mark Ingram. It's another big name free agent. I think he probably will go back to the New Orleans Saints. We have Tevin Coleman. I think the Buffalo Bills would be an interesting landing spot for Tevin Coleman. Get the most out of LaShawn McCoy this year and probably his last year with the Bills, or maybe if Tevin Coleman establishes himself as the clear running back 1, which he should, because you're probably going to have to pay him as such. You can cut LaShawn McCoy, move on from him, free up some space, and allocate that money elsewhere. Then we have Jay Ajayi. I think maybe Tampa Bay could be an interesting spot. Jay Ajayi has shown in his time with Philadelphia he can be used as a receiving back, obviously not to the extent that Bruce Arians has had with David Johnson, but he's probably much better with his hands than a Ronald Jones or a Peyton Barber. And I think you get that upside that he still can be for at least the next 2-3 years a legitimate RB1 if healthy. Then we got CJ Anderson, and I think he will go back to the Rams. Obviously had a pretty good partnership with Todd Gurley down the stretch. Moving to the wide receivers, we got Golden Tate up first. And in my old prediction video, I had him going here. Still staying the same. I think the Buffalo Bills is the ideal landing spot for Golden Tate. There's no really safety net in Buffalo right now. They don't have a tight end. They don't really have a starting slot wide receiver. So a guy like Golden Tate immediately will give you that safety net that Bills fans desperately want Mr. Josh Allen to get. Then we have Devin Funchess. I'm kind of thinking like the Cleveland Browns. The Browns right now don't really have that big red zone perimeter outside wide receiver to go with Jarvis Landry, who's obviously an inside guy, and Antonio Callaway, who's their speedster. So I think Devin Funchess should not cost them an arm and a leg, and would give their wide receiver core a dimension that they don't really have. And they have, a decent amount of salary cap space to make this happen. Jamison Crowder, the slot wide receiver, talented when on the field for the Washington Redskins. I'm kind of thinking maybe the Raiders. Raiders don't really have a proven slot guy right now, and unless they really want to put Jordy Nelson in there, I guess, which I think he's probably still better suited on the outside for that big playability, even though he's getting up there in age. A guy like Jamison Crowder would be an interesting option for the Raiders. Michael Crabtree, I kind of think maybe Dallas. He's kind of like your budget version of a Dez Bryant. He has a working relationship with Amari Cooper. They seem to get along. They seem to make each other better. So I think this would be a nice little option for Dallas to round out their wide receiver core. And then last up, we have Robbie Anderson, who I think will go back to the Jets. At tight end, only 2 names to talk about. First, we have Jared Cook. I think Jared Cook, an interesting spot for him will be the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans, for me, historically, seem like they always want, they want their tight ends to be receivers, but also they just keep getting blocking guys that they try to make receivers. We saw that with, C.J. Fedorowicz, and they had Griffin guy last year. I think getting a nice receiving weapon in a guy that's just like a fine wine, getting better with age in Jared Cook, had an outstanding year last year with the Raiders. A team like the Texans that are kind of in a win-now mode, hopefully will be able to build up their offensive line through the draft and get a guy like Jared Cook who would be a nice weapon immediately for Deshaun Watson. Then we have Tyler Eifert. I think his best case scenario for him is to go back to Cincinnati, where he has proven familiarity, proven success with Andy Dalton, and just gamble that Eifert can stay healthy. Quick look at the offensive lines right now. The top, I'm just going to put them all together, guards, tackles, and centers. We got Trent Brown. I'm going Cincinnati. Jawan James back to Miami. Darrell Williams back to Carolina. Roger Saffold to the Buffalo Bills. Matt Paradis back to the Denver Broncos, and Mitch Morse back to the Kansas City Chiefs. Going to the defensive side, we're going to start at defensive end, and now the market has pretty much dried up immediately, with Clowney going back to the Texans getting tagged, same with DeMarcus Lawrence for the Dallas Cowboys, and Brandon Graham going back to the Eagles. So just like that, Trey Flowers has become the top commodity, and I think what Trey Flowers brings, he's not the prettiest guy, not to get 15, 18 sacks, but he does a lot of the ugly things right. He might call him a grinder. Get it. I think he's going to go to the Raiders. Raiders desperately need edge rush help. I think they will use one of their first round picks on an edge rusher, but you still need someone else. I don't think Arden Key's that guy, and a guy like Trey Flowers brings a lot of legitimacy to that defensive line that already has, Mohurst, very promising. Draft, a guy, I'm not going to give away who I have in my mock draft, but draft an edge rusher in the first round. Pair that with Trey Flowers, that is drastically better than what they had last season. For 4-3, I think Ziggy Ansah will go back to the Detroit Lions. I think that's best case scenario for him. Go back on a veteran deal and help solidify that rotation with Hyder and Deshaun Hand. I think Dante Fowler. This was a tough one. I kind of just stuck this one, like going with a blindfold, trying to stick the tail on the donkey. I think Colts maybe. Colts could use another rotational guy. They have a lot of money, so I think to make a smart investment, a guy that's not going to cost an arm and a leg, but will give them immediate pressure to get after that quarterback. Dante Fowler. I think, let's be honest. When your number one sack guy, I'm pretty sure last year was like Darius Leonard, you got to get better on the edges. Even though they have some talent there, I think a guy like Dante Fowler makes some sense. We got Cam Wake. I think he either goes back to the Miami Dolphins or retires. Then looking for some 3-4 edge guys, Preston Smith. I think Tampa Bay making that transition to a 3-4. They don't really have a legitimate 3-4 outside linebacker, and I don't think they're going to gamble on JPP making that conversion. So I think a guy like Preston Smith, who has had some good years with the Washington Redskins, would make a lot of sense. And then we have Zadarius Smith, who kind of had a breakout year last year with the Baltimore Ravens. I think if he doesn't return to Baltimore, I'd look at the Tennessee Titans. That'd be a nice little spot there. Got to look at getting better than Derek Morgan. Got to look at getting better than and just replacing in general Brian Arakpo. You're going to assume that Harold Landry can take one of those spots, but oppose that, I think Zadarius Smith would be a very interesting option. Moving to the interior here. First up, we have Ndamukong Suh. And I saw this posted on, I think it was on Twitter, and I thought that makes a lot of sense. I have Ndamukong Suh going to the Cleveland Browns. I think pairing him right there with Larry Ogunjobi in the interior, and obviously you got good edge rushers in Myles Garrett, and optimism that he could still turn around in Emmanuel Ogbah. I think Ndamukong Suh would be an excellent player for a Browns team that's kind of going into the mold. They want to compete next year. And if you want to compete, a guy like Ndamukong Suh helps signal that more so than, just ignoring the D tackle spot or using a 5th, 6th round pick. Then we got Sheldon Richardson. I like to see him go to Seattle. I think Seattle could look at revamping that defensive line. They tagged Frank Clark. Still need a lot of work, I think, in the interior. And a guy like Sheldon Richardson still brings a lot of upside. And then we got Michael Pierce. I think he will return to the Baltimore Ravens. Jump to the linebackers. No real hot takes here. We got CJ Mosley. I think he'll find a way to get back with Baltimore. For Philadelphia, I have Jordan Hicks returning. I am a little skeptical about this because usually Philly doesn't let their extensions go this late into free agency. I think they probably are trying to see what the market is for Jordan Hicks, a little bit of a waiting game. But because of his injury history, I think they're trying to hope to get him back on a slightly affordable deal. But I just think ultimately Philly has enough money. They've been working, day and night, Howie Roseman, to get more salary cap for the Eagles. That I think Jordan Hicks, I'd be very surprised if he's not back with the Eagles, but I am just a little bit worried that they're waiting this long. We got Quan Alexander. It looks like there is a new contract coming from Tampa Bay, so I think he's going back to the Bucs. And then looking at Anthony Barr, I think a guy like Brian Flores would be ecstatic to get a guy like Anthony Barr there in Miami to help solidify a team that just really hasn't had strong linebacker play. They've had all right play, up and down play from Kiko Alonso and Jerome Baker, but I think a guy like Anthony Barr would be best utilized in a Brian Flores style defense. Jumping to the secondary at corner, I have Ronald Darby. I think Indianapolis could be an interesting spot. Familiarity with the head coach and Frank Reich, and brings them some outside speed that they desperately need. You got Quincy Wilson and Kenny Moore. There's some decent role players, but I think to add a dimension to that secondary they don't really have, get a burner like Darby. We got Bryce Callahan. I think he'll go back to Chicago. Kareem Jackson had a career with the Houston Texans. I think he'll go back there. Bradley Roby, who reportedly wanted $10 million. Good luck. But I think a team that, if there had to be a team that was desperate enough to overpay for a corner right now, I think it would be the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'll throw them there. And then Jason Verrett, I think he'll go back to the Chargers. Then finishing up with the safeties, maybe the biggest name group of this entire free agency period, maybe along with the running backs. Let's go. Earl Thomas, I think he's going to go to the San Francisco 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to show very similar ambition like they did when Richard Sherman went to free agency. I think pairing them back up again. Plus, they don't really have a lot of strong free safety play. Colbert was like the worst graded starting safety in the NFL last year from Pro Football Focus. I think, he's still all right because he had a good rookie year, but maybe not enough to be a starter, have him as a rotational guy or come on nickel sets. Earl Thomas, the Niners had the money. They want to be contending with the Rams next year. Getting a guy like Earl Thomas drastically helps them. Landon Collins, no longer going to be a member of the New York Giants. I made a tweet saying the Giants are going to let Landon Collins walk, who's their best safety, was debatably best defensive player in the league in 2016, and probably from a skill standpoint, the most talented guy that could play linebacker for the Giants. But they'll also have Eli Manning, Nate Solder, you got Olivier Vernon, Alec Ogletree, and Rhett Ellison counting like $75 million against your cap. So as an Eagle fan, so happy that Dave Gettleman's still there. For Landon Collins, I think this is time. The Colts, so many people talk about the Colts having all of this money. And who are they going to spend it on? Are they going to get a Le'Veon Bell? They got to get Antonio Brown. I think the best way they can spend this is bringing a guy like Landon Collins. I think he's a guy that already takes a young and promising defense and takes them over the top. We got Adrian Amos. I think a team could be like, the Denver Broncos. They got Vic Fangio, former Bears DC. I think you'll better utilize Adrian Amos than maybe say Darian Stewart, who I think is probably going to be on the way out. He could be a starting strong safety along Justin Simmons. It's a nice little tandem there in Denver. Clinton Dix, I think he could go to the Giants. They could view him as, a slightly worse but definitely cheaper version of a Landon Collins. We got Tyrann Mathieu. I think the Carolina Panthers would be an ideal landing spot there. They definitely need better free safety play, and Honey Badger pairing with Eric Reed sounds pretty goddamn dynamic and promising. And then finish up with LaMarcus Joyner. I think Tampa Bay, since Chris Conte got just put into oblivion by Vance McDonald last year, they've been looking for a free safety. And a guy like LaMarcus Joyner coming off a little bit of a down year, but overall in his career with the LA Rams, a converted corner, shows great cover ability, would be a great fit down there in Tampa. Can play a little bit of nickel as well, which they're going to be losing in, Brent Grimes, who played a little bit of nickel, and obviously Vernon Hargreaves has been inconsistent. So there you go, guys. Those are my free agency predictions. I guess the one big trade that we haven't really talked about is Antonio Brown. And the more I think about it, the more, it does look like the Niners might make the most sense. I just feel like what team has the cap that has the pressure, I guess, of competing right away. And I kind of just feel like that is going to be the pressure that Kyle Shanahan, with a healthy now Jimmy Garoppolo, is going to be facing next year. So I could see the Niners trying to show their ambition, trying to pull maybe a little bit like the Rams or the Eagles. The last two teams that from the NFC that have gone deep have been the Eagles, who made a lot of trades. We found a way to bring in like Jay and all that stuff the year that we won the Super Bowl. Then you saw the Rams go to the Super Bowl after making all those moves to get Ndamukong Suh and Marcus Peters. Like, that's the kind of ambition you need to show to compete in the very fairly superior NFC, because in the AFC, just, whatever. It's the Patriots every year. So if they want to follow that formula, bringing in Earl Thomas, bringing in an Antonio Brown, those are the kind of moves that can get you over the hump in the NFC. So I'm going to put AB going to the 49ers. So let me know, you guys, what you think about some of these moves. Do you agree or disagree? Give me some of your bold predictions in the comment section below. As I said, tomorrow will be a rebuild at some point. I don't know if I'm going to debut the new rebuild series or do a retro rebuild. And then what day is today? Tuesday, Wednesday. So Thursday, hopefully we'll have our post-combine mock draft 3.0 ready to go, which is going to be very, very important. So we'll definitely stay tuned for that. But thank you guys for watching. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.